Good morning from KHG Blast. Good to be with you this morning. I want to do something a little bit different this morning. There's some documentaries that one watches and they start with one thing and end up with completely another thing, but there's a kind of a chain in there. And that's what I want to do today. I want to start off at the end and then go back to the beginning and then move back to the end. Right, so we're going to start here by Revelation 1 verse 8, I think it is. It says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the very beginning and the very end, the one who is, the one who was, and the one who is coming, the all-powerful. That's from the Voice Bible. The Alpha and Omega, if you read in the Passion Translation, it talks about the Aleph and Tav. Right, now, let me go back to the beginning and see how we end up where I've just ended now, with Aleph and Tav. When I was born with a cleft palate, and I was way back in 1955. At about the age of 18 months, they operated and they fixed the cleft palate. But it was really, it was a good op, obviously, but the inside of my mouth was still deformed in a way. And what happened is that I, as a result of the cleft palate and so on, I spoke through my nose. I didn't speak like I speak now. I didn't speak like I speak now. Okay, that's kind of how I spoke. And I obviously had to go for speech therapy at some stage. And while I was speaking through my nose, that was in obviously from the time I could speak until later on when I had another op. My sister used to be the only one who could understand me, and she was my interpreter, explainer. So if I said something, she would be right there. She's just a bit younger than I am, 17 months, and she would then, if somebody looked at me, what's he saying? No, she was saying, this is what he said. So she could always understand me, and to this day, I think she still understands me pretty well. What a lovely, lovely, lovely sister I was privileged. I am privileged to have, not was, I am privileged to have. She's still around. And, right, but anyway, so life goes on, and I went to school, a little school called John Cowie in Rusapi in Rhodesia at the time, KG1 and KG2, which is what they call grade 1 and grade 2 these days. And then I had to go for speech therapy and another palate op. So I went to a school called Selborne Rutledge in Salisbury, in Rhodesia, in 1963, and started with what we call Standard 1 over there, which is, I think, grade 3 in modern day terms. Anyway, and while there, I think it was 1963, must have been either towards the end of 62 or the beginning of 63, I had a palate op, a second palate op, done by a certain Mr. Owen Smith, a plastic surgeon, reconstructive surgeon in Salisbury. He had quite an interesting history. He was injured during the Second World War, and he was a pilot, and got very bad facial burns and had to go through 2 years of painful operations to reconstruct his face. And as I remember him from back then, even I could remember his scarred face from the burns and so on. And so after he recovered from this, he decided to become a plastic surgeon himself, and went and studied in London, I think, and became a surgeon, and then moved to Salisbury in Rhodesia. Anyway, he did my second palate op, and they kind of hollowed out my mouth. And then I went to Selborne Rutledge in Salisbury to school, and there was a certain Mrs. Cotson there who I had speech therapy lessons with for a couple of years, about 2.5 years. And it was very interesting. She used to put a piece of, if I can find a piece of paper here somewhere. I'll get this one here quickly. And a piece of paper like this, and you put a very small piece of tissue on the top, on the paper, and put it there, and then I had to speak without the tissue being blown off. And that's kind of how they taught me how to speak, through my mouth instead of through my nose. Or she did anyway. So my grateful thanks to Mr. Owen Smith and also to Mrs. Kotson for the wonderful work that they did in changing my whole life. Anyway, at Selborne Rutledge, I was there for 3 years, standard 1, 2, and 3. And in standard 3, you know, there were quite a few students there. So it was a sort of a normal-sized junior school in Salisbury at the time. But standard 3, I remember distinctly, had 2 classes. There was so many students. And we were about, I suppose, between 20 and 30 students in a class, I can't remember. And instead of naming the 2 classes, Standard 3A and Standard 3B, they were very smart there. Probably the best school I ever went to, Selborne Rutledge. And not that I went to a lot of schools, I only went to 3, John Cowie, Selborne Rutledge, and Mtali Boys High. But they didn't have a 3A and a 3B because, as I found out, as you go up into senior school, you had your A, B, C, and D streams, and the guys who were academically inclined were in the A stream, and then if you're less so academically inclined, you were B, C, or D stream, sort of a downwards order. And in real life, at the end, it means nothing. It depends what you make of your own life, whether you're A, B, C, or D at school. But anyway, at Selborne Rutledge, they were very smart. And they didn't have that kind of system because I think some guys tend to be degraded by I'm a D stream guy or I'm a C stream guy, or if he's in an A stream, he thinks, ooh, I've made it in life, or whatever, you know. Anyway, so at Selborne Rutledge, get back there again, they didn't have a 3A and a B, they had a 3 alpha and a 3 aleph. 3 alpha and a 3 aleph. And I didn't know what that meant. I just knew, can't even remember which one I was in, whether it was 3 alpha or 3 aleph, but I was in one, so it was aleph and alpha. Only later years did I, you know, as I went and studied Greek and Hebrew at school, not at school, at theological college. You know, you studied aleph is from, not aleph, alpha is from Greek, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, and aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So smart at Selborne Rutledge. Anyway, so then I learned about the difference there. And at Selborne Rutledge, we actually had a couple of Jewish lads there at school with us. Nat Kavanagh was one of them in my class, or in my year. And I think there was a guy called Dennis Skolnick. He was head boy, I think, at Selborne Rutledge, about 64, 65, around there. Very nice guy, I remember him. And Nat had an older brother as well. I'm sure they would have appreciated what aleph meant, you know, being young Jewish lads and probably well schooled in Hebrew and so on. But things I was totally ignorant of at the time. Anyway, there we go. So there I am now at college, and we did our Hebrew and Greek languages and all the New Testament studies and everything else. And so life carried. So now I learned the difference between those two things, or what aleph and alpha were. Anyway, life goes on. I graduated. I went and studied a bit further in linguistics and so on, and did some Bible translation for quite a few years, and then came here to South Africa, where I've been in a pastorate for a few years, and then I was helping my brother-in-law in the East Rand. And we were running a thing called Outrageous Grace Life Foundation. And I invited a friend of mine who's in that, my brother-in-law's congregation, Andre Bluchno, to come and share some stuff with us. He's a very, very thorough person, very, very thorough person. When you meet him and you see him, the way he dresses, he's so smart. If you know the Hebrew letters, they're very kind of neat and well defined, and and that's exactly like he is. Neat, well defined. It's it's very. Anyway, he was actually doing a self study in Hebrew, and so I invited him to come and just share what he was studying, because he really thinks outside the box, this man. He's a very dear brother. I enjoy his thinking. I enjoy the way he looks at life, and he looks at his Christian belief, and the way he sees things is out of the box. And I really enjoyed that. Anyway, so I asked Andre to come and share what he was looking at in the Hebrew and stuff like that. And he came and he shared, and he showed us how the Hebrew alphabet, each letter goes back or evolved from an actual picture that was drawn. Anyways, and this is where we now get to the Aleph and Tav story. And Aleph the original Aleph was a picture of an ox head with horns. And the original Tav, which is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, was a little cross sign like that. Okay, which then developed into the actual letter that we see later on in the Hebrew Bible. And anyway, I'll get to that just now. So anyway, so that to me was very interesting when he talked about that. And then I was reading the Passion Translation. And there are a couple of things that the translator, I've forgotten his name now, but also I think a man who thinks a bit outside the box. He himself is a Bible translator, and he, I think from Central America somewhere where he was working, and he did a few things, and the way he translates I thought fascinating, And I looked, and in Revelation 1:8 he says he translates it as I am the Aleph and the Tav, instead of the Alpha and Omega. And I thought that's interesting, that he does that. And then, also another part he does translates quite differently. But anyway, and I looked and I thought, how does he get to that? And I sort of went and read up about him and his notes and so on. And something that never struck me before. John, when he wrote that in the Greek, Alpha and Omega, John was not a Greek. He was a Jewish guy. He was a Christian, but he was Jewish, from a Jewish background, obviously. And so he, in his own thinking, would have said Aleph and Tav, which he just translated into Alpha and Omega. And so suddenly it gets a new meaning, this Aleph and Tav. All right, so what does it mean? What is Aleph and Tav mean? It's not just beginning and end. Obviously, there's an idea there, first and last, Alpha and Omega, but there's something more to it. And when Andre did his Hebrew thing with us at what I call OGLF, Outrageous Grace Life Foundation, and he talked about these different letters, suddenly a new understanding came. Okay, so here we go. Aleph. Aleph was the original, like Egyptian hieroglyphics, the original Hebrew letters. Very similar in style. It was pictures, basically. The letters were pictures. And each picture would depict something to the guy who was reading it, looking at it, reading it, interpreting it. So the ox head with the horns would mean something, would have different kind of meanings. Okay, the ox head would represent power. It would represent authority. It would represent strength, and even sacrifice, because that's what the Jewish people did with oxes. They were regularly sacrificed on the altar once the sacrifices were instituted after Exodus. So anyway, or during the Exodus. So anyway, so there we have. So the ox head would also represent restoration. So it also represented the essence of life. So there are various things in that picture that they saw that they could draw from. It didn't have to mean all of them all at once. But there are different things, aspects you can look at and you can draw from that. So it had deep meaning. It wasn't just one thing. It would depend on the situation you're in and so on what it meant. And then there was Tav, which, if I can just grab my pens here, there was Tav, which, like I said, it was just like two sticks, like my pens here, crossed like that. Okay, that was the original symbol for Tav, and what does Tav mean? What does that mean? It crossed sticks basically. Okay, it was a mark, it was a signal, it was a monument, and it also signifies, of course, a cross. Okay, so the Tav is a sign, a cross. So when we read, Jesus says, I am the Aleph and the Tav. What is he saying? He says, I am the power, I am the authority, I am the strength, I am the sacrifice that you see on the cross. The Tav. I am the monument that was put down by God, almost like an altar that was put down, that God gave to you, the sign on the cross, the strength of the cross. I was the sacrifice that was made on the cross, the lamb that was slain. So suddenly I'm the Aleph and the Tav, or I'm the Alpha and Omega, gets a totally new insight, not necessarily new meaning, but a new insight into what Jesus is trying to say to us in the book of Revelation. Remember this, the book of Revelation is a revelation of Jesus Christ. It's not a revelation of the beast or of the Antichrist or of this or that. It is a revelation of Jesus. It says so there, right at the beginning of the book of Revelations. So Jesus is revealing who he is. He is the authority, he is the power, he is the sacrifice that was made on the cross, and in him all things are. If I can just read that again. The backup to Aleph and Tav. Here in the Voice Bible it says in verse 8, the one who is, the one who was, and the one who is coming, the all-powerful. Okay, that's what he's saying. And that's what it's all about. That's what the cross is all about. That's what Aleph and Tav is all about. So here's me starting off, being born in 1955 with a cleft palate. And that leads all the way to Revelation 1:8. In my life, that's how I got there. And that's an amazing thing. Now take your own life. Where have you been? Where have you come from? Where are you going? What has God done in your life to take you to a certain position? And this is what God has done in my life and used in my life. Not that he made me with a cleft palate, but whatever was that condition I found myself in, he's taken that and he's brought me to a place where this has happened, where Aleph and Tav is something that's significant to me. And even from an age of, when it was, 1965, I think I was 10 years old in grade 3, standard 3. Not grade 3, grade 5. Standard 3. When I first heard Alpha and Aleph, 3 Alpha and 3 Aleph. And here I am at the age of nearly 65 right now. And Aleph has this meaning. A word that I've heard when I was 10 years old. And now I'm 65. That's, goodness me, was that 50 years? 55? I don't know, a long time ago. Years and years ago. A lifetime. But yet God has used that. He's taken me on that road to end up here at Aleph and Tav. The God, our Christ, our Jesus, who was sacrificed on the cross for us, who is, who was, who always will be, and the all-powerful one in our lives. And I tell you, all of us in our lives, we need him. We need him, and we want him to be in our lives because he is Jesus, the God who is love. And that's wonderful. So whatever situation you are in right now, whether you are 10 years old, whether you are 60 years old, whether you're 90 years old, it doesn't matter where you are in life. Think of the road you've come and how God has used that road to put you in the place where you are now, where you can be useful in the kingdom and display the glory of God. God bless you. Stay well and enjoy yourselves and have a blast again here from KHG Blast. Cheers. We'll see you soon.